Look around you. Evidence of climate change is everywhere, and it's happening on a global scale. Temperature increases predicted by scientists for the next 50 to 100 years will severely affect agricultural crops. Vineyards and wine grape cultivation are some of the most closely observed agriculture, the haute couture of food crops. What we are beginning to see in the world's wine-growing regions, Spain, California, Italy, Chile, France, Argentina, Australia, South Africa, of reduced crop size and severely affected crops due to climate variability, decreased optimal growing season cycles, too dry, too cold, too wet, too hot, are indicators of more of what's to come during this century. We're headed to 11 degrees of global warming. In the 2012 report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Too Late for 2 degrees Celsius, they conclude that the conservative estimate of a 2 degrees Celsius rise in global climate temperatures will be easily surpassed, and that we are realistically looking at a 6 degrees Celsius or 11 degrees Fahrenheit rise in global climate temperatures by year 2100. Warming of 7 degrees Fahrenheit or beyond is incompatible with organized global community, is likely to be beyond adaptation, is devastating to the majority of ecosystems, and has a high probability of not being stable. That is, 4 degrees Celsius, which is 7 degrees Fahrenheit, would be an interim temperature on the way to a much higher equilibrium level, explains climate expert Kevin Anderson. Planning for 4 degrees Celsius in 2100, let alone 6 degrees Celsius, is tantamount to planning for the end of civilization as we know it, according to a review of more than 60 recent studies. What to expect? Permanent Dust Bowl conditions over many regions around the globe that are heavily populated and or heavily farmed. Sea level rise of some 1 foot by 2050, then 4 to 6 feet by 2100, rising some 6 to 12 inches or more each decade thereafter. Massive species loss on land and sea, perhaps 50% or more of all biodiversity, and much more extreme weather. Wine grapes are the canary in the coal mine. Wine grapes and vineyards are seen to be the advanced messengers of what's to come in regards to climate change effects on agricultural crops. My documentary, Wine and Climate Change, will present the most up-to-date scientific climate change analyses and take a close look at some of the climate adaptations that viticulturists are pursuing today, such as hybrid breeding of extreme weather-resistant vines, planting in different agricultural zones, emerging global viticultural regions such as China. Knowledge equals preparedness. Please support my film by donating to the production at indiegogo.com/wine and climate change. Back in 2011, I was commissioned to write an article by the New York Times on a story I pitched called Wine and Climate Change. The resulting article is this one, Winemakers Rising to Climate Challenge. It published in November 2011, and the focus of the article was in fact on what the viticultural community, what winemakers around the world were doing in response to the effects of climate change on their vineyards. Global warming does affect vineyard cultivation. This has been documented most notably in Bordeaux in France and also in Napa Valley. Two regions where the increasing heat year after year has significantly impacted vintages and harvests. Subsequent to this article publishing in the New York Times, I proceeded to make a documentary teaser proposing that this be made into a feature film documentary called Wine and Climate Change. While vineyard cultivation stands on its own as its own agricultural crop, of course, its significance to the food crops of the world is that it's been described as being a canary in a coal mine. In other words, vineyard cultivation, viticulture, is like the haute couture of agriculture. And so what happens to our vineyards is sort of a forewarning of what can happen to our agricultural crops and our food crops most notably the world over. So let's take a look now at what has been written since 2011 about this topic. This is a more recent article done in June 2015 about the effects of climate change on the global wine industry. Climate change, be it brought on by anthropomorphic sources, the natural cycle of the earth, or a combination thereof, is and will continue to have a significant influence on global ecosystems, including agricultural and viticultural systems. Since the beginning of the 20th century, we've already seen increases in atmospheric CO2 levels and a global temperature increase of 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And models predict even further increases even in the best case scenarios. So this is a trending topic that's ongoing. Notably, if no attempts to mitigate climate change are made by 2100, the U.S. will likely see an 81% reduction in suitable wine grape acreage, with upwards of half of the current acreage in Napa and Santa Barbara counties lost by 2040. And that cites this Diffenbaugh study of 2011, which has not yet been updated. So those are the last statistics. Those are the latest statistics that we have. Okay, so physiological changes. The impact of climate change on viticulture and winemaking is not simple. In fact, while temperature increases are the primary culprit, there are many other factors that are affected by climate change. So those are some of the complicated issues that I'm looking into in the feature documentary film. So we have to continue to embrace the chance, diversity, and different varieties of wine grapes, and accept the fact that change is necessary. There will be amazing high quality wines in the future. Where they come from and what grapes they will be made from is the big unknown. Will they come from Bordeaux or Tuscany? Or will we see fine wines emerging from places like British Columbia or Idaho?